Greetings and welcome to our presentation on the legal aspects of purchasing. We are pleased you have selected our program to become acquainted with the laws that can affect how the purchasing professional performs a purchasing function. As a purchasing professional, it is a good idea to be aware of the laws that stipulate what is legal and what is not when performing your job. This presentation will define and discuss many laws that should be enforced when performing the purchasing function. When a purchasing professional issues a purchase order to a supplier, they are creating a contract. A contract that says, the company I represent has agreed to buy product XYZ from your company at blank dollars to be delivered by such and such date. This is an offer to buy and the acceptance of the purchase order by the suppliers in agreement to the sale of the product. This constitutes a legal contract. With all of the words previously stated, you are probably wondering where this presentation is going. The first thing to understand is there are rules and regulations that every purchasing professional needs to know and understand. The organization will have rules for performing the task, and there are also laws that are enforced by the governing bodies of the country and world that have to be followed. Of course, a buyer can do the job without knowing all of the laws that should be followed, and having no knowledge of what is legal and what is not can cause problems for your organization in the long run. However, familiarizing yourself with the legalities of doing business with a supplier will not only help the purchasing professional, but also their organization. It can also prevent the organization from paying a lot of money to correct mistakes that were caused by the lack of knowledge of the laws. Many times a supplier will be located in a state other than the buyer. Although federal laws apply to every state has individual laws that have to be followed. Prior to 1942, doing business across state lines became complicated when it came to laws of the states because many laws vary from state to state. The Bar Association created the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC, in an attempt to simplify the difficulties of doing business across state lines. The UCC regulates laws of interstate commerce. The UCC consists of 10 articles. The articles deal with various areas such as Article 1 defines and gives a purpose, Article 2, Sales. Article 3, Commercial Paper. Article 4, Bank Deposits and Collection. Article 5, Letters of Credit. Article 6, Bulk Transfer. Article 7, Warehouse Receipts, Bills of Lading, and other documents of title. Article 8, Investment Securities. Article 9, Secured Transactions, Sales of Accounts, and chattel paper. Article 10, Effective Date and Repealer. Article 2 is the area of interest for the purchasing professional. Although it is not the exception to memorize this, it is good to become familiar with what this article stands for. Article 2 of the UCC deals with a lot of the areas that are pertinent to the buyer's role. It is mostly used to settle disputes over contracts pertaining to the sales of goods and rights of ownership. Louisiana is the only state that has not adopted Article 2 of the UCC. This article governs contracts for the sales of goods as it pertains to the rights of ownership to tangible goods and property. It does not cover services, intangible property, or real property. Also covered in this article are the laws pertaining to the lease of goods between a buyer and a seller. Also covered in this agreement are price terms, payment terms, and delivery terms, and how they are addressed if the two parties have not agreed on them. The code also discusses how fraudulent contracts are handled. Within the last 20 to 30 years, doing business internationally has become more of the norm than the exception. On April 11, 1980, the United Nations Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods, the CISG, was adopted. It applies to international exchange of goods. Unlike the UCC, it is no statute of fraud. It stipulates that the agreement must specify how the price was determined, and the acceptance must mirror the offer, and the acceptance is effective upon the receipt. As a purchasing professional, you have to make sure you are not giving any supplier the upper hand over another. There are many laws put in place to ensure fairness in doing business. Some of the laws were put in place as a result of actions that were taking place and appearing to give certain companies an unfair advantage over others. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was one of those laws enacted to prevent any disadvantages to any one company. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, named for Senator John Sherman of Lancaster, Ohio. It was put into motion to prohibit trusts. This act outlaws contracts, combinations, and conspiracies that unreasonably restrain interstate and foreign trade. This act makes it unlawful for competitors to agree to fix prices, allocate customers, or agree to rig bids. The Robinson-Patman Act of 1936 is another law that closely affects how a purchasing professional does business. This law prohibited price discrimination. It made it unlawful for manufacturers and suppliers to provide price discounts to some buyers and not to others if it made it difficult for the buyers to compete in the market. This does not mean volume discounts cannot be offered, though. This law was created due to the concern that large retailers were using their position in the market to get special deals, and small companies did not have power to compete. The Robinson-Patman Act is an amendment to the Clayton Antitrust Act enacted in 1914. The Clayton Act, drafted by Henry D. Lamar Clayton, was created to prohibit exclusive sales agreements, price cutting to prevent competition, intercorporate stock holding, and rebates. This act did not apply to labor unions and agricultural interests because human labor could not be considered as property. When a company hires an agent, whether purchasing or sales, that person is given the authority to carry out business on behalf of the company as needed. The person doing the hiring is called the principal. The person hired by the principal can either be a special agent or a general agent. A special agent has limited authority and usually performs limited functions. A general agent, however, will have greater responsibilities and will be authorized to perform various duties for an organization. The purchasing professional should be knowledgeable of what their area of authority is. For example, if a purchasing professional is only authorized to negotiate purchases under $1,000 for any buy, but any made over $1,000 is not an authorized buy. If these guidelines are not followed, the purchasing professional could cause a lot of trouble for themselves and, worst, their organization. Equally important is knowing that the sales agent that may be representing the supplier's organization is authorized to agree and negotiate certain contracts. If, as a purchasing agent, an agreement is made between you and the sales agent that is not authorized to make agreements, then your time has been wasted. It is important to understand if the authority of the person you are doing business with is limited. There are many laws that affect the way a purchasing professional's job is to be performed. While it is not expected that all of the laws are memorized, it is helpful to have an idea of the basics of the laws. Knowing that it is unlawful to make deals with a supplier that prevents the competition from the same access is important. Knowing that the purchase order is a contract and is a legal document that defines a business agreed upon by the buyer and the seller is important. Understanding if your authority is limited and whether that limitation is there will help you in performing your job. Also, understanding imminent limitations in the supplier's agent, sales, may have an equally important aspect as well. Purchasing can sometimes be a complex responsibility, and understanding the laws that govern that function will help determine your success as a purchasing management expert for your organization. Thank you once again for your time and attention, and this is BusinessTraining.com, where you can earn a master's level qualification to make more money.